Slim for authentication, setting up console commands. Okay, so I'm going to do this lesson a little bit differently. I'm actually going to show you the outcome of what we're setting up. The reason I'm going to do this first is because this is going to be one heck of a lesson. There's going to be a lot in it. I think you guys will really enjoy it, but it's going to be a good hefty lesson. So I'm going to show you why it's going to be so hefty. So I set up the ability to add console commands in Slim. And so right now I'm on my experimental console branch, and we can go to our console, our routes, console.php route. And again, I haven't set this up in a tutorial yet. I'm showing you the outcome, then we'll go back to where we were. And so what we're going to be able to do is do something like this. We have make test. All we have to do is run php slim make test, and then we'll say file name, and then we'll say /config/test.php, right? And then it gets the name from the argument, which was file name, and then it outputs it in this info. To add a new test, all we have to do is do make example, and then we can do, I don't know, file, and then we can do function, and then we can do this info, and then this input, get argument file, just like that. And then if we want to add a description of the command, we can. If we don't, which we won't right here, then we can simply just do php slim and then make example, or maybe show example, and then file name. Whoop. My bad, console. And so if we run that real quick, and then we go right there, we have that. So we have our routes. But just like we have our routes in our controller, in our route/web and route/API, we have our routes for console commands. But more than that, we also have this console directory with commands. And so we have this make migration command. And so right here, we define the name, make migration, the help, the description, the arguments, whether the argument is required or optional. The default value for the argument can optionally be passed, and then the handler for the given argument. And so, if you remember last lesson, we were doing finks, and then it was create, and then example migration, and then we set up a file, so we didn't have to add the C, but the configuration path has to be defined. It's not really pretty. Now what we can do is we can do php slim make migration add example migration file. All right, so there, if we go to our migrations, we have our add example migration file. So this is going to be a hefty lesson. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, but just to show you, that is what we're setting up. We're setting up the ability to make commands, to register them in our console kernel, and to add them or run them or execute them by using php slim, whatever the name is, with any number of given arguments. So guys, stay tuned, because in this lesson we are going to dive deep. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is get this php slim entry point set up. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create or touch a new file called slim. Touch is just the terminal command to make a new file. Next, we need to actually change the mod on that to 755. This makes the file writable. After that, we need to go into that file, and we need to add this special shell script. I don't really know what they're called, but like definition, it's just saying this is going to use our PHP environment. And then we're going to prove it works by just saying echo hello world. So let's try it out. php slim. And there we go. We are all set up to be able to use php slim. After that, let's go to our bootstrapper file. We're actually going to create a new bootstrap, and we're going to call this console.php. Now normally you would only want one bootstrap file, but we have some weird conflicts between finks and Syfony, so we have to make sure we don't run the Syfony commands, and we'll get into that later. Let's just do this. Let's do require app.php, and then we'll make that directory, and then directory is going to be /app.php with a dot. There we go. All right. So then, if we go back to Slim and we do require once the directory, and then we're going to get our autoload, vendor autoload.php. After that, we're going to say app is require base path, and then we're going to do bootstrap /app.php. After that, we're going to want to first create our kernel. And to do that, we're going to resolve the app console kernel from our container. Resolve console kernel. Once that is done, once we have our kernel, we want to actually bootstrap our application. So to do that, we're going to eventually add this new bootstrap application method. And then it's just going to bootstrap our console application. Then we're going to want to handle the given command. And this command is going to be a Syfony command. So handle Syfony console command. And so to do that, we're going to first get our console. We're going to say that's going to be app, and then resolve Syfony component /console /application class. Once we get the application class, the console, we're going to say console run resolve Syfony console, and then run command. Finally, we're going to exit out of our console. We're just going to say exit console application. All right. So the next thing I want to really point out is that this PHP Slim shell script is the same thing as public/index, right? The only difference is that public/index.php is for HTTP requests. This Slim shell script is for console requests. So just like we have a routes API, routes web, we're also going to have a routes console.php. Then we can go right there. But there's one exception. Instead of using our bootstrap app.php, we're going to point to our bootstrap console.php. And normally you would have the different kernels share the same bootstrapper, but we are not going to because Finks, that migrations tool we installed, makes it a little bit difficult, and it still needs our boot app up and going. But here's what we're going to do. Once we're done with that, we're going to do, and this is actually a little bit to do with migrations more than commands, but we're going to use this /vendor/bin/finks, and then we're going to do init, and this is going to create that Finks file again. And then what we're going to do is go to finks.yaml, and we're going to set this up to point to database migrations, database CDAs, and then we're going to point this to our bootstrap file, which is going to be bootstrap/console.php. Just like that. Then we will need to do migrations table. We're going to do Slim, and then I'm going to set my password and stuff on here because it doesn't matter too much. But we need to do default database is Slim, make one of the database keys Slim. It's going to be localhost. The name is going to be Slim. My username is Homestead. In case you guys were really wondering, my password is secret. And that's just what it is on when using Homestead as your virtual machine. Okay, so when that is done, we can actually go back here and we can remove this migration config file where we had that weird import. And then we can do, what can we do? mind blank. Oh yeah. What we can do is we can say, okay, default database is that. We have our Slim right here, and then we can basically put everything else that you would think would go in here, but they're all going to go in the Bootstrap console. And so whenever we do Bootstrap console, the only thing we can't do is that Syfony console run command. If we go back to Slim, this is what we can't do. So what we can do, however, is we can do this. We can get all of this stuff outside of the require, of course, and we can remove, gosh dang, and we can remove this, and we can put it in Bootstrap console. All right, so now we have this in Bootstrap console, and we can simply return the console, and that will run the Syfony console commands. Just like that. Okay. So now we're set up. We have our base set up. Require once auto load. Oh yeah, we can also do that. We can also do console. We're going to put our auto load right here. Then we need to do /autoload, and then this is going to be our bootstrapper. We're going to return our app bootstrapper, which will actually get us our app, and then kernel app resolve console kernel. We need to create our console kernel. We need to bootstrap our application. We need to resolve the Syfony app. Actually, let's refactor this a little bit more. And we're just going to say return app, console booted app. And so all we're going to say is we're going to say return app. Then inside of Slim, all we need to do is resolve the console, run the console, and exit. Just like that. Okay. Now we're good to go. So if we run PHP Slim, it'll start out. Okay, all called undefined function base path. And that's because we have not autoloaded yet. So we need dir dot and then /bootstrap console.php. Okay, so there we go. Slim app resolve. Then in console.php line 10, app resolve, perfect. Okay, so now we're in a place where we're ready to get started. So we need to add 3 new files off the bat. One is going to be app. 2 is going to be app factory. And 3 is going to be app factory bridge. So first, let's start with our app. App needs to extend from the Slim app. We're going to override the Slim app. Then we're going to add 2 new functions. And the first is going to be booted via console. And the second is going to be booted via HTTP request. Okay, so before we can get those set up, we need to add, well, we don't need to add these ones. These ones I am going to add because I can't stand doing app get container every time you want to access something. So now we'll be able to access some of the most common container methods based on our app or from our app. All we're doing is we're just aliasing app methods, accepting whatever parameters are passed in, and then passing whatever parameters. So this just says you can accept any number of parameters, and this says I'll pass in whatever number of parameters I accepted. So call, get container, call. Does the container have something? Has. Container bind is going to be an alias of container set. Make is make. Resolve is an alias of get. So once we have those set up, we can do return this has booted via console. If it has that key binded to the container, then we'll resolve booted via console. And let's go over here, next line. Otherwise, we'll return false if it hasn't resolved yet. Then we're going to do the same thing, but for the HTTP request. We're going to say booted via HTTP, see or nay. If it has that property, we'll check if it's true or false. All right, so that is the first one. That is our app. Now what we need to do is we need to go to our kernel, and we're going to find these throughout our application, but we need to replace the expectation of app with our app. And actually, I'm going to remove most of these as we go, but we're going to be using our app from now on. It extends the Slim app, and so if there's type hints, like right here, they will currently break. So throughout this process, we'll see those. I'm sure I'll miss a few, and we'll kind of accidentally run into them, and that's okay. So let's go kernel and bootstrap. I know we have some in both of those. Let's do that, and okay. So we just took kernel and bootstrapper. I'm going to check the service provider class real quick. And I think this should actually pretty much cover most of them. Most of our classes extend from these classes. And I try not to type in classes that I might possibly have to change, 20 of the same class. So that might cover it all. Okay, so after that, let's set up our app factory. And to set up our app factory, what we need to do is go to Bootstrap app, and we're going to grab our app from here. So actually, we're going to go bridge first, and all we're going to do is we are going to just copy these two methods. Then we're going to go to our foundation app factory bridge. So we're changing that up a little bit. And literally the only reason we're copying these functions at all is because we need to override the type hint. So we need to remove the Slim app, and we need to remove the Slim factory app factory imports. We can also remove all of those, and we can remove that. And then, I need Command Z real quick. So once we remove the imports, we'll be good to go. We'll reference our app properly. We actually need to also add this create controller invoker method because it's private. When we extend, that's what we're going to do. When we extend from the bridge class, we don't actually inherit this method, so we need to hard code it in. Otherwise, we won't be able to create a controller invoker and use dependency injection with our routes and controllers. So once we have that set up, we can just remove Slim app and the Slim factory app factory, because our app factory will extend from Slim factory app factory, and our app will extend from Slim app. So we'll remove those, and then we'll do sort lines, and then by length. Okay, there we go. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, next we need to go to our app factory, and we need to do the same thing. So what we're actually going to do is in our app factory bridge, we use this app factory, right? But Slim has an app factory, and so if we go to the bridge and we look at this app factory, so this is the parent app factory bridge, and we want to go to this class right here. This is the class we want to extend. So let's simply do app factory extends Slim, or let's do Slim slash app. Oh man, what is it? I can't remember. There it is, Slim factory app factory. So we need to extend Slim factory app factory. Just like that. Get rid of that weird semicolon. And then we need to add in this create from container method, just like that. And when we add this in, we need to use the container interface. I'm surprised it didn't auto import for me. Container interface. And then we can actually go to App Factory right here. Do a Command F, do create from container, and then we can copy this in. Just like that. Do a quick copy. There we go. And then we need to, of course, remove use Slim app. So we'll reference our app. And then if there is a reference to the Slim app factory, which there is not. And so finally, we'll do another Command Shift M to sort that out. By length, okay. Good to go. Okay, so now we have those set up. So we should be good to go. Now in our kernel, our HTTP kernel and our kernel, let's see. Okay, so let's start in our bootstrap. Let's start an app. And so now we're going to use the foundation, boot foundation, and then we're going to say we want to use our app factory bridge as app. And by using it as app, we can create our new container. While we're in bootstrap/app, let's set up some other stuff. So we're going to have two kernels now. Our first is going to be the HTTP kernel. That's going to be a new HTTP kernel. Then we're going to have a console kernel, and that's going to be the new console kernel. After that, we're going to want to bind both of these to our service container, just like that. And then we're going to return the app. We're going to do the bootstrapping after we return our app. So to actually set that up, let's go and update our kernels. So first we want to go to our normal kernel. And I'm going to change a little bit of naming conventions too, just because we're doing so much refactoring as it is. Might as well fix all the stuff. Probably not great logic, but you know. All right, so now we're going to update the kernel, and we're going to say app equals this app. We're going to completely get rid of this right here. We're also going to say this is going to go into a new function called bootstrap application. And then we're going to say that we're going to remove this bootstrap. So we're not going to use that static creator anymore. And then we're going to use public function get kernel. And then we're going to change this to public function get app. And we're going to return this from our get kernel. And then we're going to say within our bootstrap application method, we're going to say app equals this get app. Kernel equals this get kernel. And then we're going to say bootstrappers equals this bootstrappers. Finally, we're going to do bootstrapper setup app, and then we're also going to pass in our kernel. And then we are good to go. So get and get kernel needs to be a method. There we go. We're going to say app kernel and then bootstrappers. Boom. Okay. After that, we need to actually go to our bootstrapper. And we're going to update our bootstrapper base class. Now, we have our global collect method as well, so we're going to do a quick refactor here. But first, we need to do accept the app and a reference to our kernel. Then, on the construct, we're going to do kernel and then this kernel equals kernel. So remember, our final static setup will actually loop through all of our registered providers, and it will properly, it will loop through all of our bootstrappers defined in our kernel. So our kernel has bootstrappers, and it is responsible for taking all of the bootstrappers defined in the given kernel, whether that's HTTP or console. And this static setup method will just loop through all of the providers defined in this array, all of the bootstrappers defined in this array. Okay, so back in Bootstrapper, I'm going to actually just copy this from over here and speed this along. So what we're doing now is we're going to do the same exact logic, just changing the terminology, and then the new Bootstrapper app kernel is the only difference. We were saying loader equals new loader app without the kernel. Now we're just changing to the proper terminology, and then we are doing the same logic. Just app and kernel, bootstrappers, before boot, boot, after boot. So we can get rid of that altogether. Okay. The next thing is we need to do public kernel. Then we can get rid of that app up there, and we are good to go. After that, we're going to go to our app. We're going to create a new directory. We're going to call it console. Within console, we're going to create a new console kernel. And then within foundation, we're going to create a new console kernel. This is going to work just like our HTTP kernel. First, we're going to extend the base kernel. And then within our console kernel, we're going to register these bootstrappers. We're going to say first, bootstrappers load environment detector. This one does not exist. This does not exist. After that, we're going to load two of our providers that do exist. So we're going to have to define load environment detector. We already have load environment variables and load aliases. Then we're going to create another new bootstrapper called load console environment. After that, we're just going to bootstrap all of our service providers, which we already have, but we will make a minor update to. Okay. Then our console kernel is going to extend the kernel, but we're actually going to use our console kernel from boot foundation as kernel. Just like that. We're going to do public array commands, and then we'll do a directory of commands, much like how we did middleware for HTTP. And so we're going to do commands, and then we're going to do new PHP class, and we'll just do command for now. All right. Then we'll say command slash command class. Just like that. And this is how we will register our commands. Okay, so Now that we're here, let's go to our console kernel and let's check these out. So first we're going to make the load environment detector. Load environment detector is hugely important. The reason being is that our functionality will differ depending on if we're in a console application environment or if we're in an HTTP console environment. So to really figure out how to load things, we need to know the environment which we're in, what we need to load, what we need to register, the providers we need. If we try to react to an HTTP request and we're in a console, then it doesn't work well. So we're going to first do use our app support HTTP kernel. We're going to use our app commands console kernel. There we go. Typos on typos. Okay, so we're going to create two constants. We're going to create the HTTP env and the console env. And they are going to be set to the given class that they refer to. After that, we're going to add this little snippet. We're going to get the class name of this kernel, because remember, in our kernel, we said the kernel is this, and then whenever we bootstrap anything, we pass the kernel with the bootstrappers. When the bootstrapper accepts the setup, it adds it to the constructor signature. The constructor signature accepts the kernel, it sets this kernel. So we have access to this kernel. What's cool about that is we actually have access to the current kernel. We only have access to the kernel that is running. So from the console, we know it's the console kernel. If it's in the HTTP, request lifecycle, then we know it's the HTTP kernel. We're also going to use our boot foundation kernel. The reason we're going to use this is so that we can bind it to this kernel. So the kernel class is going to be this kernel. So if we ever want to resolve the kernel from our container, we don't know whether it's going to be the console kernel or the HTTP kernel. We just need the current kernel for like shared functionality that both console and HTTP requests use. We can just resolve the kernel class, and it will always get the current running kernel. All right, so we're getting the base name of HTTP kernel and console kernel, and then we're comparing it against the class base name of the currently executing kernel. So we have kernel HTTP kernel equals current kernel. And current kernel can equal HTTP kernel or console kernel. Then all we're doing is saying, okay, if the current kernel is the same as the HTTP environment, then booted via HTTP equals true, otherwise it equals false. Same logic with console. All right, and then if you remember in our, where were we using that? Oh yeah, our app. Within our app, we say if this has booted via console, this resolve booted via console. This has booted via HTTP request, this resolve booted via HTTP request. And so by doing that, we can now check if we're booted via console or booted via HTTP request by simply accessing our app. So that's all we're doing in that provider. After that, we have one more provider we need to add, and that's the load console environment. So we're going to say load console environment. Again, we're going to extend our service provider. And then we're going to need these two classes. We're actually going to have to create one of them. So we're going to create a directory in Foundation called Console. Console is going to have two classes and a trait. So first is going to be console. Next is going to be command. And the third is going to be the trait of format output. Format output. Now, format output is going to be on our console, and our console is going to use format output so we can have prettier console output. All right, so we're good to go there. So now, back in our Bootstrapper, let's go to load console environment. And we want to use our app support console. Then we want to use our Syfony component console application. Now notice this is the wrong path. The reason that path doesn't line up is because we're actually going to add a new PHP class here called console, but it needs to be in its own directory. I guess no, it doesn't. So we'll call it console. And this is just going to extend from the bootstrap or boot /foundation /console and then /console. All right. Next, back in our load console environment, you can get rid of that one right there, and we can do public function before boot. Then we're going to say the console is going to be a new Syfony application. So Syfony component console application. Then we're going to get this app and we're going to bind the application class to the console. Notice we knew up the console application before we bind it. If we knew it up inside the binding, then every time we resolve this key from our container, it will new up a newly created instance of the console. We don't want to do that. So create the instance out here, bind in the already created instance. Finally, after that, we're going to do console setup this app and then console. All right. So then we of course need to go over to our console and define what setup means. And instead of extending service provider, extend bootstrapper. I'm sorry guys, I'm a little out of it today. Okay. So extends bootstrapper, and then we go to console and we will make this public static function setup, and then we're going to do app. And then we will also accept the console. Okay. Once we accept those, we're going to statically set static app to app and static console to console. Then we're going to set static commands equals commands, or an empty array. Then we're going to go up here and we're going to do protected to static app. Copy those, and voila. Good to go. All right. After that, we need to actually extend the Syfony command. So this is going to look weird because we're calling it console and we're extending a command class. But this is the Syfony command. And so the reason we're calling it console is because we're going to have another command class that will allow us to be more specific with how we create commands, whereas this one can still create commands. So this will create commands in our routes console file by saying like console, we'll use app support console, and then we'll be able to do console command show example, and we'll be able to do like function, and then we'll be able to do this output right line hello world. So this console command will be able to do that, and we'll be able to define commands like we define routes in our web or API.php, but we'll also have the ability to create classes of commands. And so console is for really defining these types of commands, whereas the command class will extend from console and define commands right there. But that's a lot to take, and we'll get there. You'll see what I mean once we start getting there. All right. So in console, we're extending that. Then we're using form output. We have app, console, and commands. After that, we're going to add these 3 public functions. And there we go. We are properly passing in the data we need. Okay. So the last thing we need to do is we're going to go back to our kernel, and we have our console kernel, and we have our HTTP kernel, right? So within our console kernel, we need to grab the load environment detector and pass it to our HTTP kernel, so they both load the environment. After that, we need to go to our service provider's bootstrapper, and we need to actually update this and say if app, we'll do app equals this app, and we'll do providers equals config app.providers. We'll do if app is running via HTTP request. Then providers is going to equal providers and then plus the app providers route service provider class. Else, if app is running via console, the providers is going to equal providers, and then instead of this, we're going to make that the console service provider. Then we're still going to do the exact same thing, except we're just going to do app and providers. So service setup app, service setup providers. Okay, so the logic right here goes as follows. We're getting the app. We're getting the registered providers. We're saying the providers equal all of the registered providers in config, and then plus the route service provider if we're booting up our application via an HTTP request. Else, if the app is running in console, we'll boot up our application with all of the providers registered in config/app plus the console service provider. So this will properly do what we want it to, but now we need to actually go and remove the route service provider class. After that, we also need to go to our providers, and we need to add a new console service provider. Console service provider is going to extend the service provider, and then of course we are going to add our traditional register and boot functions. Just like that. Alright, so now we have our route service provider, our console service provider, and these two will only be booted up based on the given environment. Sweet. Okay, so let's get back to our console. So within console, we're going to set up our command. And we're going to start with the routing commands. So this is going to get a little funky. So here's what's going to go on. We have a command, and we want to say show example, and then name, file, etc., etc. It's like arg1, arg2, arg3. That part's fine. We can get that. We can get the arguments from here. Show example name. The hard part is going to be this. This callback function, this closure, we need to bind it to an instance of our command. And yes, in case you're wondering, you can do that in PHP, and we're about to learn how. So this is going to be probably the coolest and most complicated part, but definitely by far the coolest part of what we're doing so far. So here's how it's going to go down. We're going to go back to our Bootstrap Foundation console class. We're going to say public static function command. And the command is going to accept a signature, and the command is going to accept a closure handler. Okay. Next, we're going to add a property called protected handler. Then we're going to go down here and we're going to do this. We're going to say command is going to be a new static, which means it's going to be a new console, but really we're extending Syfony. So we're going to say it's going to be a new Syfony command. And that is actually saying it's going to be a new self. So we'll keep it static though, but we're really saying it's just a new Syfony command. New static just says make it a new me. Okay, so after that, we're going to do command and then set handler. And we're going to pass through the handler. So right here, this is funky number 1. So we're going to say the set handler is going to accept a closure and is going to be a handler. And this is actually something pretty new to me, but I think it's stellar. It's awesome. So we're going to say this handler is going to handler, and then we're going to bind it to this. And so if we go through to this class, this is closure. So it's final class closure. You can't change it, you can't extend it, you can't do anything. So it has construct, as invoke, bind to. If an object is given, the type of the object will be used instead. So what it does is it says, okay, get a new this, get a new scope. It gets a new scope. It lets you bind that method onto the scope by saying, here's our class, here's the new scope. So get this and bind it to this scope. It's going to be this with this scope. So that's why it's double this. A little weird, but it works. Next, we're going to return this. All right. Now we're going to need to go and say command make. Then we're going to say our input is going to be the signature exploded. So we're going to get all of the items every space. So show.example name config path would equal show.example. I don't know why I'm doing dot, it's colon, and then it's going to be name and then config path. So the signature is now going to equal that. Next, we're going to get the first element from the input. We're going to say name equals input, and then we're going to say command set name. And I guess we could just do to input 0. Command set name to input 0, and then we want to do an array shift input. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, now we only have arguments, and all arguments are going to be wrapped in those braces, just like that. So we set the name, and then we remove the name from the input. After that, we need to say set argument name, or set arg name. We're going to say the set arg name is going to be a callback function that's going to accept an arg, and then it's going to get the string of that arg, and we need to actually use string from Illuminate support. And then we're going to say between, and then the brackets. So now it's going to say name is going to equal name. We're getting the string between this left bracket and between the right bracket. So we're just removing that part, and we're removing that part. And we're just making it a callback function because we're going to have multiple arguments. And so we're going to collect the input, and then we're going to say each, and then it's going to be add argument. But we're also going to have to add this add argument command, which is going to be also a callback function. It's going to accept an arg, and then is going to get our new command instance, add the argument, getting the name, or setting the name, using that arg, and then requiring that it is required. So, important note, let me pull that over. Okay, set name, and then input required. There we go. So important note is that when we go to our routes console.php, all arguments within this file that are defined here in routes/console.php, all of these arguments are required. If you want optional arguments, if you want like different types of Syfony console command arguments that are accepted, you can implement all the functionality and the commands we add right here in our console commands directory and register to our kernel. So just like routes, just like controllers, we have two ways to resolve commands, to resolve an action. The ones we define in our routes are a bit more biased, and they'll restrict you on what you can do, but they're quicker to write. So yeah, everything in route/console, all arguments are required. So once we have that set up, we want to say, okay, static commands, and we want to push a reference to this command. And then we want to return the command. So what we really want to do here is we want to do, where's it at? So remember, our console right here is a new Syfony application, right? So what we really want to do here is we want to do self console or static console, and we want to add a new command, just like that. But we can't do that, or we just want to add the command because we already newed it up. But we can't do that here. And the reason is because Syfony uses a Fluent API to say like command set description hello world, and then it uses like set handler. I guess we made that one, but like add handler or add argument. You can define your argument name, and then you can keep adding them here. Add option, add usage, etc., right? So we probably won't use most of those, but they're still available for us. And so what we want to do, instead of doing static console add command here, we want to wait until later. We want to wait until after we load all of our commands from route/console. That way, within our console command and our route/console, we can do like set description, and then we can do show example. Show example command. And it will allow us to add this fluently already, but if we were to register it up right when we ran command, then we wouldn't be able to fluently add more specific command data through Syfony's Fluent API. So I hope you guys tracked that one. That's a lot to take in. But basically, we don't want to add this to Syfony yet. We want to wait till we completely build it. And so we just add it to this array. And then once it's completely built, we'll call this array, which is just a reference to the command, and then add it to our Syfony app. So we'll return command. All right. Next, we need to go down here and we need to add this public function execute. So execute is going to accept the input interface with input, and is going to accept output interface output. Then we're going to set this input to the input. We're going to set this output to the output. After that, we're going to say throw when, and we're going to say not callable this handler. Then we're going to say no command handler defined. All right. So this handler, remember, is what we're setting here. That's the closure. That's what we're binding to our class. So we're saying command set handler handler. When we set the handler, all we're doing is we're saying this handler is binded to this, and then down here we're saying if this handler is not callable, throw an exception. No command handler defined. So that just says, hey, we have a handler, we have a callable function or invocable thing that is responsible for executing the behavior of this given command. If it doesn't exist, we'll throw an error, so now we know we have it down here. So we can just do this handler, and then it is always return 0. After that, we need to do two things. First, let's do the easy one, input and output. We're going to put input and output up here. Input and output are going to be input interface, input, and then we need to do output interface output. So this execute command is responsible for actually executing the Syfony command. All we're doing is we're saying, okay, so we can add some custom functionality. We're just going to set some stuff here and then call our own command within this command to execute the Syfony stuff. So we're just simply saying, hey, let's just take where we're already executing the command, add our own custom command, and then before we add our custom command, we'll set the input and output, and that way this handler can access it. The last thing we need to do is be able to define or resolve the handler function. Because remember, it's actually a property, right? It's not a function we're setting as a property. You can't set a function. You can only set a property. So what we're going to do is we're going to do return, and then, we're going to create our magic call method, public function magic call, accepts a method, and then it accepts parameters. Then we're going to say throw when method does not equal handler, method does not exist. So we're only going to use the magic call method to catch the handler function when the handler function is not defined. Then we're going to say call user func this handler, and then with parameters. And that's all it's doing, guys. It's going to say, call this function and pass it the parameters. We're setting this function right here. We're setting that closure right here. And we're really defining the handler right here. So command adds the signature, then it has an anonymous callback function. This callback, this closure, is then passed right here. Once it's passed there, we say set the handler, and when we set the handler, we're actually saying we're setting it to the property of handler. Then we're binding the handler to this and then giving it a scope of this so we can access this inside of handler. Then we're returning this. After that, we finish creating the argument definitions for our command. And then we just push our command in and we'll add it to Syfony. We'll register it to Syfony later on. Then we return our command. After we register the command to Syfony, and when Syfony executes it, it passes in the input interface and the output interface. We set this input and we set this output. And then we say, throw an exception if there is no handler. If we can't handle this, if we haven't defined a handler, throw an exception. Otherwise, call this handler. But we're calling the handler method, not the handler property. So, because we have not defined a method called handler, and there's a reason for that, we'll get into that later, we have to say, okay, define the magic call method. The magic call method will catch us when we try to call methods on a class that do not exist. They will hit the magic call method. The first method is going to be, or argument is going to be the method. Method is handler with the parameters. Parameters is an empty array. Then it's going to say, throw an exception if the method we're calling, if this method that doesn't exist that we're trying to call is not handler, then let us know the method does not exist. Otherwise, we're going to call the function that is actually says a variable, which we set here in set handler. We're going to call this handler with the parameters. So we can just do this handler. So guys, that is the initial setup. So now let's go over to our providers. We're going to go to our console service provider. And within our console service provider, and I think this is the last step, we're going to have to do require routes path and then console.php. Next, we're going to do kernel equals this app resolve the kernel class. And remember, if we resolve this key, it doesn't care which kernel it is. It will get the current kernel, whether it be HTTP or console. Next, we're going to say route commands equals console and then commands. We're going to use, and we're going to do app / support. Not really. Import PSP Storm, what are you doing? Wow. There we go. And so we're going to get console, and then we're going to get our commands. And so this is going to be our route commands. So route commands, what I mean by that is these route console commands. These are our route commands. Our kernel commands are going to be the ones we register here. That will be their own class. But we're working on our route commands first. Once we get route commands working, then we'll finalize our kernel commands. Okay, next, we will still get our kernel commands right now. And we'll say collect kernel and then commands. And then we'll do map function command equals new command. So route commands are already returning instances. Kernel commands need to be newed up. Finally, we're going to collect and combine our kernel commands with our route commands. Then we're going to loop through our combination of both kernel and route commands, and then we're going to accept the function that will just be responsible for doing something with each command. And all it's going to do is it's going to get our Syfony console that we have set to the console static method. It will be, our Syfony console will be returned when we call this static console. And then we're going to add the command. Just like that. And there we go. All right, guys, we're almost there. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go back to our Bootstrap app. And we need to pass in the app to our console kernel and HTTP kernel. We also need to use app console kernel, just like that. After that, if we go to app, I'm noticing these are gray. So it looks like we're not using either of these methods. So if I'm remembering right, we did a load console environment, and then it was load service provider where we were using those. Okay. So we have running via HTTP request. We need to do booted via HTTP request and booted via console. So booted via console, booted via HTTP request. After that, we need to create a this command class right here. So Bootstrap Foundation console is actually going to extend our console. And there's a very specific reason for that, but it's going to have a protected name, or I think it's protected static default name. And actually, we'll get to that later. For now, what we can do is we can remove this. And the reason we're removing that is because Syfony will error out because we don't have it configured right for our command classes. This is basically empty. But what we will do is we'll do /boot foundation command and then console command. All right, and so this is basically here just so we don't have to import this whole path every time when we make new commands. So let's see, did we get everything? So let's try this. If we go back to our routes, we go console, we have the show example name. So let's try it out. PHP slim show example name. Oh, so close. What do you got? What do you got? Foundation console input interface. Okay. So if we go back to our Bootstrap Foundation console and we scroll down to this method, execute, input interface was not imported properly. So we just imported it. Hopefully it works now. Hello world. There we go. So this is really cool. Man, I'm really excited about that. So if we go down to routes and console, now we can just do console command, and then we could do something like, I don't know, show users, and then we could do, or show model, and then we can do 25, or maybe count how many. All right, then we can do function, and then we could do this count equals this input get argument how many, and then we could do /app/user latest, so get latest, and then we'll do like, I don't know, take 25 I think is what it is. So now we can just do die and dump that, and that should be output. So this might error out just because I'm not in my virtual machine, which means I get my MySQL database privileges rejected. So I'll go into my virtual machine right now. Your setup might be different. I don't have permission to access MySQL unless I'm SSH'd into my virtual machine. So I'm doing that now. If I go to code, and now if I rerun PHP Slim show model 25, Illuminate database, eloquent, latest, not found. So maybe it's latest, take. There we go. And so that's actually the database query builder. So then if we do take 25 get, there we go. And then we could of course do like the first user. And let's get rid of that. And then we could do first name, and then we could do echo. And then doesn't matter, they'll save. So that was actually from the last lesson when I was showing the factory create versus make. So yeah, guys, that's pretty cool stuff right there. For now, let's remove that. And, oh, actually, I want to show you one more thing. And we'll just do echo that for now. But if we do this, if we do PHP Slim, we'll actually get, and here, let's clear that out first. We'll get a list of our commands by namespace. So see how it says show example command? That's the description. The reason they're under the show group is because they both start with show:example. So if I made another console command and it was like, I don't know, display string and then string, and then we did function, and then we did echo this input get argument, and then we did string, and then we just did set description to display string. We can do PHP Slim, and now we have this display name group with this display string. The description is display string. So now if we do PHP Slim display string and then hello world, echo hello world. So pretty cool stuff. And then we should be using this output write line, not echo. And then it's this output write line. There we go. All right, so now let's get our commands set up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a make migration command. This is going to extend from command. And remember, command is extending from our foundation console command, which is extending from console, which is extending from the Syfony command. Sorry, it's a higher hierarchy, but normally I avoid those, but this time I guess not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do protected name is going to say make migration. Then we're going to do protected description is going to be make a new scaffolded migration for our database. Make or scaffold new migration for our database. Then we're going to do protected help, and then equals try to use /vendor/bin/finks instead. So that's if they need help, they can try to use the root migration package. And then we're going to add a protected function arguments. An argument is going to return an array where the key is going to be the argument name. So like that's going to be the name. And then we're going to have to add these functions, but we can have either a required, an optional, or an array field type. And so we're going to say this is required. So require, and we'll say required. And then we're going to say the description is add a migration name. And so this is the description for the name argument, not for the command. And that's all required really needs. After that, we will have this public function handler. And all we're going to do is we are going to say, let's do command equals /vendor/bin/finks, and then we're going to say create and then name, where name is going to equal this input get argument name, and then we're actually going to use shell exec because we're trying to interact with another command, the commander console tool from our commander console tool that's built on top of another commander console tool. It's a little funky, so all other commands that don't interact with Finks, which is what we're using for migrations and seeders, will work a lot better. But for these, just because we don't really need to dive into it much further than we have, this is what I'm going to go with. Feel free to dive into it more, though. Syfony's got a whole bunch of documentation on how to set this stuff up better. And then we'll also do this info, and then successful if no error thrown above. Just like that. And then in our console kernel, we'll do commands make migration command class. Okay. So here's what we got going. Within our migration command, within any console command, we want to define the name, the helper, the description for the command, the list of arguments of the command, and the type of argument that each argument is, with the description of each argument, and for fields that require them, a default value. But required fields don't have defaults, they're required. Then we'll define our handler, and our handler will be responsible for actually executing all of this information, or executing the command. So the last thing we need to do is we actually need to go to our command. This is going to be bootstrap foundation console command. We're going to extend from our own command class, and then we're going to say protected name equals command add signature, protected help equals add command help info, and then protected description is going to equal add command description information. Just like that. Then we're going to add 3 new functions. We're going to add, and these are going to be for argument types. Protected function require, and it's going to have a description that will be default. We actually call that required, and we'll make that require actually. Just go require, just like that. All right, and then we're going to return an arg, which is actually going to be our import of input argument as arg. No, didn't mean to do that. Use input argument from Syfony, not silly, as arg. And then we're going to do arg required and then description. Next, we are going to copy this twice. One is going to be of array, where the default will be an array. And this is going to be is array, description, default. And then we're going to have an optional field where description and then default equals false. And then we're going to do, we're actually going to do return default. And then we're going to say, if we have a default value, arg is optional, there is a description, and then we have a default. Otherwise, arg is still optional, and we have a description, but we don't pass in the default. So it's optional. Finally, we're going to add this protected function arguments. And this is going to return an empty array. That's going to be add command signature, or sorry, add command arguments. Just like that there. And then we're going to use this protected configure function. This is where the magic happens. We're going to say this set name, this name. And again, Syfony uses a Fluent API build-up commands. Set help is going to be this help. Set description, it's going to be this description. And then to build up our commands dynamically like we do, we're going to do collect this arguments. And then we're going to say each, and we're going to do function options, where options is going to be like, say we have name, and then we have an array of options. And so options is the value and name is the key. And so then we're going to say this add argument name, and then we're going to pass our options in as an unpacked array, aka parameters. So that would actually look like this. It would look like this add argument name array of options. And you can see the actual parameters populated with the keys right there. But we're just doing that dynamically because that's what we do. We make things easy. We're going to say public function handler. We're going to say handle command. All right. So if everything worked properly, which I am making no promises about, we should be good to go. The last thing we need to do is, because we're calling this handler function now, we're not just checking if this handler is callable. We have to say, and this is in our foundation console when we actually execute the given command, we're saying if this handler is not callable and there is no method called handler, there is no method. The method handler does not exist on this. So if this handler property, which is that callback, that closure we define in route/console, is not defined or not callable, and we have no handler method hard-coded in, like in our make migration handler command, then throw an exception. Otherwise, call this handler. All right, so let's do PHP Slim make migration example migration. Method info does not exist. Where is that coming from? Method info. Okay, so let's go. I think that's coming from our command class right here. Ah, okay, I know what it is. So in our format output, it's actually coming from our make migration. It's this. So the last thing we have to do is, and I'll just copy these in. Again, guys, this is always up on GitHub. So if you don't want to like write all the code with me, obviously try to. It makes it a lot easier to actually understand it. But with lessons like this where we're going through a lot, absolutely feel free to go look at the GitHub repo. It's linked in the description and just go through it yourself. But anyways, make migration failed because it didn't have this info, and format output trait, which we're already using on console. So console and command both have access to format output. All format output does is it gets this output, and then it says write line, and then in Syfony, to style the output, you can do, it's like HTML. Info is green text, comment is yellow text, black text on a cayenne background. Sounds relaxing. That's question, and then error is going to be white text on a red background, which is what that was. So there we go. The migration class name example migration already exists. And if we go database, migrations, ooh, it does. So let's try this. Let's try teams table migration. There we go. And la, we got a teams table migration. Okay. So guys, that is setting up console commands in a nutshell. That's some pretty cool stuff. I want to show you guys a few quick commands and kind of going through the entire process. I know this has been a long video, so I will have all of this up on GitHub. At this point, we set up the console. We can add console commands through either console.routes, console routes, or we can add commands through this commands, setting up something like this, and then registering it to our kernel. So we have two ways of setting up commands, both really cool. This next part is I'm just going to use some of the stuff we've created as far as factories, seeders, migrations, database stuff, models, and I'm going to create some commands just to make some of the stuff we do easier. So again, this will all be on GitHub, but feel free to stick around, and we're going to speed up here quite a bit. So this is going to be more real flow coding. So first off, we are going to create this database table display. All right, next we're going to say shell exec extends that, and then we're going to go back to database table, and then we're simply going to go and add that there. All right, and then we're going to say extends, and then it's going to be boot /foundation /console/command, just like that. All right, display, and then database table, display, and then extends got stuck up there. That's what that was. Okay, so then we're going to do db show, and then we're going to do table. And we'll make that table our model. And then check your MySQL or check your connection, do, I don't know, DB connection to see if the table exists. All right, after that, we're going to say show all of your models / table records in a table for display. Just like that. Okay, so the purpose of this is really to set it up so we can see what's in our MySQL database without having to go into MySQL every time. And so we're going to say we want to be able to add the table, and it's going to be model or table that all records, model or table that we want to display a table for. All right. Then we're going to go down here and we're going to say, okay, table equals new table. That is going to be a Syfony component console helpers table. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say the table is going to equal this input get argument model. Next, we're going to say the model is going to equal app and then dot string, which is going to be illuminate string of the table. And then we're going to get the studly case, which is camel case, except it's actually capitalized in the first letter and then singular. So we're going to get the syntax to the model. We're going to get the path to our model. After that, we're going to say if model count is less than 1, return model, and then we're going to say table is empty, and then that's actually going to be this. Let's do this comment, and then model table is empty, and then we're going to do return to exit out of the function earlier. All right, after that, we're going to say rows equals model get to array. After that, we need to get our headers, and we're going to say that the first element is what we want. We're going to say first element from rows. So we're going to say first row. Then after that, we're going to say that our headers are going to be the array keys from our first row. Finally, we're going to say table set headers, two headers, set rows, two rows, and then we're going to do table render. Then we'll get rid of all of this jazz down there. All right, so table equals new table. Let's do table name right there so we don't have a conflict of verbiage. And then, just like that, we have database table display. So now if we go to console kernel, we go commands / database table display class, and we do PHP Slim. We have database show. So show db show. So PHP Slim db show, and then we'll do users. All right, what happened? Too few arguments to function. So what I forgot to do was in my table, the table actually needs to know about this output. It needs this output to output itself to the given console. And then we also need to change getting the model argument with get the table argument. And there we go. So now we have an easy way to get our tables. So again, that is just PHP Slim db show, and we can go reference the model. We can do PHP Slim db show, reference the model lowercase, PHP Slim db show, reference uppercase model, reference uppercase plural, and we will always get that. So all we did was we said get the string of the table name, make a studly case, make it singular. Studly case singular would be user. And so what we're really doing is we're getting app /user, and we're doing count and then we're doing git, and then we're just displaying that data to a table. Pretty cool stuff. So now we don't have to access MySQL whenever we're going through lessons, every other freaking command. All right, next, we're going to add a new DB or database refresh or database fresh command. So let's do this. We'll do database fresh command, do database table display, do all of this jazz right here, database fresh command, then import everything we need. Go back up here, we can just extend from command. Don't need to get the full path, which by the way, we don't need the full path here either. And we did that in make migration as well? No, we did not. Okay. So database fresh command, what is this going to do? Well, first we're going to say db fresh, and it's going to accept 0 arguments. And then all we're going to do with it is it's going to say drop all database tables and remigrate, then reseed all tables. All right, so be careful with this one. This could be dangerous if you're in production. Not going to put the time in to add like a check or anything, so just, be careful. So then what we're going to do is, because we don't have any arguments, but what we do want is we want to access the DB. And so we use DB. And then within our handler, we will get rid of all of this jazz. What we're going to do is we're going to do column equals, and I hate the syntax, but it is what it is. We're going to do DB database. And so then it's going to be tables equals DB select show tables. So we're going to do for each tables as table, and then dropping is going to equal the table column. And I don't know why, but you need this to get the table column. That's the property for whatever reason. Don't get it, don't like it, but it is what it is. Then we're going to do if empty, and then dropping, dropping. And we'll do this info, no tables in database to drop. All right. Else, we're going to do dropping equals implode. So we're going to implode our dropping list and make it a string. Then we're going to use the database and begin a new transaction. Once we begin a new transaction, we need to run a database query or statement, a SQL statement. We need to do drop table, and then we want to do dropping. Just like that. We're going to do database commit, and then we're going to do this info dropped all tables. Database commit just stores your I'm not even getting into that one. That's outside the scope. And then we're going to do this info, and then this info is going to be dropped all tables. And then we're going to do dropping. So we're actually going to output the table names we dropped. After that, we're going to say this info, and get some brackets going. And then we're going to say this info, migrating tables. We're going to add that again, just like that. Then we're going to do shell exec /vendor/bin/finks, and then migrate. So we're going to run all migrations. Then we're going to do this info, and we're going to do migrations completed. Next, we're going to do another line. And let's do this. Let's do command equals /vendor/bin/finks migrate. And we're going to do shell exec command and then we're good to go. We're going to do migrations complete, just like that. And then we're going to go back here, and we're going to do command equals, and then we're going to do /vendor/bin/finks, and then seed run. And a lot of the reason we're making all these commands is so we don't have to do that vendor bin finks path every single time. We're going to do shell exec, and then we're going to do command. Just like that. And then we're going to do this info, and then seeders completed. And then we're going to add one more here called this info seeding databases, or database tables. Just like that. All right. So now we're doing that one right there. Seeders completed. La la. Good to go. So then if we go here and we do command/database fresh command class, we do PHP Slim. We do PHP Slim DB show users, and then we do PHP Slim, and then we do DB fresh. All right. Now if we do DB show users, we'll still have some users, but we'll have less. And the reason we have any at all is because we ran our seeders. So if we comment out this command right here, and we reran that DB fresh, and then we did PHP Slim DB show users, users table is empty. So if we uncomment this out, and we run that again, and then we do users, you have 10 users. So we're properly migrating, we're dropping, migrating, and seeding all of this stuff. So that's good. That's really good. All right. So next is we have this teams table migration, right? Well, let's set up teams real quick. So let's do a new PHP class. We're going to do team, and we're going to do extends model. It's going to be eloquent model. Then we're going to do just protected fillable equals user ID and then name. Within name, what we're going to do, within team, what we're going to do is we're going to do a public function, a relationship. We're going to do user, we're going to return this belongs to user class. So we're just doing this mainly as a way to test and set up stuff, but now we're going to test our ability to actually factorize with relationships. So we're first going to add a factory, and we're going to call this team factory. We're going to copy user factory, we're going to call it team factory. Again, it's not a class. We're going to say app team, and then we're going to do created at first name, last name, email, password we can get rid of, and we can just say name equals, I don't know, faker. We'll just go first name. I'm not sure what it actually would be. Then we'll do user ID equals faker int integer, or we'll just go 1, just like that, and then say hardcode / override user ID. All right. So after that, we'll go to our users table, copy this logic right here. We'll bring it over to our teams table, and then we'll say table is going to be teams. It's going to have a name, which is a string, a user ID, which will be an integer, and then add timestamps and create. So if we're lucky, that should be good. After that, if we go to commands, we're going to create another command called database or make seeder command. And I just noticed database table does not have command at the end of it. And then database table command, and then make cedar command, just like that. And then if we go to make cedar command, it's going to be protected name equals make cedar. We're going to do extends command. After that, we're going to do protected help equals make a cedar scaffold. Then we're going to do protected description is going to be generate a database cedar scaffold. Then we're going to add a single argument, and that argument is going to be name. Name is of course going to be required, and then it's going to be name of generated cedar class of cedar generated of scaffolded cedar class. We'll return that. We'll add a handler. The handler is going to be pretty simple. We're going to get the name. We say name. Then we're going to do shell exec. And we're going to run the command, which is going to equal vendor bin finks, and then it's going to be seed create name. Then we're going to do shell exec command, just like that, and then do this info successful, and then a little parentheses if no message is displayed above. Just like that. All right. So now I have a make cedar command, which we don't want. We just want command. And then get the name. It's required. All we need to do is add it. So first we will do command / class that up. We'll do that. We'll do that. And then we'll do command shift M. Sort those out. Sort lines. Okay. After that, we need to do new PHP class, and that's going to be db seed database run cedar. Again, that is going to extend the command. And then we're going to say protected name is going to be dbseed. The protected help is going to be seed database using cedars. Not very good help there. And then the description is going to be run database cedars. Run the database cedars. After that, we're going to say the protected function arguments, and then we're going to define a single argument, protected, there we go. And that single argument is again going to be name, and we're just going to do this require, and then scaffolded cedar file name. Or, I guess no, if we're running those we don't need any arguments. So then we can just do public function handler, and then we'll do name equals this input, get argument equals name. We don't need the argument. We need to do shell exec, and then we need to do vendor bin finks, and then it's going to be seed run, I believe. Then we're going to do this info successful if no error shown above. Just like that. Okay. Then we're going to do commands / database run cedars class. Boom, 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 pow. All right. So getting back to our relationship setup, if we go back to our Teams migration, we properly have the migration. So the first thing we need to do is run our make migration database fresh. Makes it, one last command. I think this is the last one, guys. Migrate. Database migrate command. And then we also have a database rollback command. Database rollback migration command. All right, so these are the last two that we really need. Extends command. This is really making me want to automate this. Database migrate command is going to extend command. All this is going to do is it's going to be protected name, which makes it's just going to be migrate. Then we're going to do protected help is, I'm going to be lazy at this point. It's just going to be migrate, and then protected description is going to be migrate migrations to database. There we go, and then we're going to do protected function arguments. There is none. We actually don't need to make that one. There's no arguments, so we won't. We're going to do public function handler, and then we're going to do shell exec, and then vendor bin finks migrate, and then this info successful when no error shown above. Just like that. Okay. Database make or database migrate command, database rollback migration command. So protected name equals migrate rollback. We're going to do protected help is rollback database migration command. And we're going to do protected description equals rollback previous database migration. Next, we're going to do, there are no arguments. We can probably add arguments to this one later on. But then we're just going to do name, no, not name. I keep doing that. It's going to be shell exec, and it's going to be vendor bin finks migrate rollback, I believe. And then this info successful if this message is the only message. Error show above. Boom, boom, boom. And then maybe it's just rollback. Let's do that. Let's do /finks /vendor. It's going to be vendor bin finks. And then it's just rollback. It's crazy. Okay. Well, yeah, it's just rollback. We're looking at our commands right there. So if we go down here, and I guess I already changed that to rollback. We'll do migrate rollback. Then we just need to register those final commands. That's going to be commands /database rollback migration command class. And then it's going to be commands /database, and then was it migrate command class? And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And within our commands directory, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we should be good to go. Okay, so now if we do PHP artisan, or sorry, Laravel, PHP Slim migrate. Okay, so let's see, what do we got going on? So let's try, what command did we just run? Migrate, make migration. So if we comment out make migration, still get one. Database migrate, database table display, comment out rolling back. Database migrate command. Try that one. Not defined. Okay. So, but now if we do PHP Slim, that'll work. So what do those happen to have or not have in common? Database migrate command. So can we? So, my bad, guys. Okay, so database migrate and database rollback. Those two cause an error. Database migrate command and database rollback. What's the common denominator between the two classes? Neither of them have a protected arguments. They don't return an empty arguments array. So if we do this, I bet this will work. Hoping this will work. Make migrations. What was the other one? There it is. Okay. Then database fresh command. Does that have arguments? It does. So now if we do PHP Slim, it properly works. Okay. So let's do this. Let's actually remove these arguments, and then just so we don't have to add arguments if the class doesn't have them, save lines of code. And then let's pull this down. And then not using those imports either. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the parent class. We're going to do protected function arguments, and that is going to return an empty array. And that should still work even when we don't have argument commands. There we go. Okay, so now let's try PHP Slim. Slim migrate. So it's going to be db migrate. Okay, successful. And then PHP Slim migrate rollback. Okay, so now let's just do PHP Slim db show users. PHP Slim db show teams. Okay, sweet. So now if we migrate, yes, I mean db migrate. I'm about to change that. And then we do db show teams. Tableswarm teams does not exist. Teams, okay. But in our migrations down here, did we not add teams? Did add teams. So if we go MySQL, you do use Slim, you show tables, still not there. So what if we do PHP Slim db fresh, and then we do PHP Slim, so it's only migrations table and users. Huh. Change method, right? Your reversible migrations using this method. So to be honest, I'm not 1000% sure how Finks works. That's what we're using for migrations. So, Slim db show teams. There we go. I don't know what. Oh, I dumped the autoload. So it was just composer dump autoload. So now if we go PHP Slim db seed, and then we do PHP Slim db show, and then actually teams don't have anything. We don't have a seeder for teams. So let's do new or PHP Slim db make seeder. So that's going to be make seeder, and then we're going to do teams table team seeder. Let's just do that. Good old team seeder. Then we'll go down here to seeder, and then in the team seeder, we can reference our team factory. We'll actually reference our user factory too. We'll do /user class create 10. We'll do teams equals, or sorry, users equals that. Then we'll do users each, and then we'll do function for user equals factory, and then it's actually /app, and then it's going to be /app/team class, create 10 of them, and then when we create 10 of them, we always want the user ID to be the current user ID. We want everything else to be random, and then So what we're doing is we're factoring up 10 users using all dummy data. Then we're looping through all of the newly created users. We're factoring up 10 teams for each user, and let's actually just go one team for each user. And then we're just saying, okay, the user ID is going to be the current user ID. So each user we create here will have one team associated with it. That team's user ID will be that given user's ID. So now if we do PHP Slim db seed, unknown formatter first name. What does that mean? User factory. Speaker first name. Let's do app user maybe. Maybe team user. Ah, There it is. All right, now PHP Slim DB show and teams. Here we go. User ID, name, and ID. And then if we go PHP Slim DB show users, there we go. So Pedro has user ID of 31. So that means 31 is Kip. So Kip owns the Pedro team. Next, we'll clear that out. And what we'll do is we'll actually just go and we'll make this easy. I won't go overboard with this or anything and make like a 3-hour video. We're going to just remove all of this and we're going to do command console just, I don't know, tinker function. And then what we're going to do is, and that's going to be console command tinker, and then we're going to do app/team first user, and then we'll get the user first name, and we'll get the app, say team equals app/team first. So we get the first team. Then we'll output team, and then belongs to, then we'll do team user first name. And then we'll do PHP Slim tinker belongs to Kip. So team belongs to Kip, which is right. That is proper. So sweet. Maybe we could also do like team name though. Yep, and there we go, guys. So we have our elegant relationship set up, a factory seeder migration set up for both user and team. The team belongs to a user, and then we can say that a user belongs to or has one team. And then we could do like return, this has one team class, etc. We won't do that right now because I don't think we're actually going to use teams other than that example. But guys, that is all I've got for today. I'm sorry that was so long. That was a long video. If you stayed this long, I hope you learned a lot. I hope this was something cool. And yeah, like and subscribe, guys. Next time, we'll be getting onto the front end and setting up our login, register, log out, forgot password, reset password pages. We'll be using Vue.js for that, and we will definitely not be taking this long on any future tutorials. So thanks again, guys. This is Zachary Horan with Clean Code Studio, Clean Code, Clean Life, and that is PHP Slim console commands in a very, very large nutshell. See you guys next time. Alright, so I almost forgot this last part. We set up our console command to work properly, but if you go to your web application right now, it will not work properly. Mine is because I already fixed it, but then I removed it. So if you reload your page, you'll get middleware, routing middleware not working. Really funky error. All that's really going on is that when we go to our HTTP request entry point, we don't actually bootstrap our application. So first we need to resolve HTTP kernel. And we need to do kernel equals app resolve HTTP kernel, and then HTTP kernel class. That will get our kernel. Then we need to bootstrap our HTTP application, and then we need to do kernel bootstrap application. Once we do that, and then we reopen our page and we reload, no entry for app HTTP kernel, Kernel, they are right, kernel, there we go. And then we reload, and voila. So now we have our web application properly booted, and then if we do PHP Slim, we can see our console is also properly booted. So guys, that is setting up Slim 4 for both HTTP requests and console commands.